A quiet morning in Savannah. An old man with medals on his chest and a cane in hand walks home from breakfast and gets shoved to the ground by a young officer who sees only the surface. No yelling, no resistance, just silence, and one piercing look that says everything. But what the officer didn't know, someone was watching and recording. What followed turned a forgotten veteran into the face of a national reckoning. This isn't just a racist story. It's the kind that changes people, one quiet breath at a time. The late September sun bore down mercilessly, but Elliot Carter's steady steps defied both time and heat. He moved with a quiet determination along East Victory Drive, his oak and brass cane tapping a slow, measured rhythm against the cracked pavement. Around him, storefront windows blurred in the haze. The only sharpness belonged to the flapping edges of a battered American flag above McAllister's Hardware. The colors had faded, but it still clung stubbornly to the pole, weathered by seasons of promises made and broken. Elliot's linen shirt clung to his back, damp from the effort of walking the long blocks home after the veteran's breakfast. He welcomed the weight of the sun, the whisper of distant thunder rolling across the marshes. It was the kind of heavy stillness he had known before storms, back in places where carrying a weapon was second nature, and every glance could mean survival. He didn't need a uniform anymore to know what a gathering storm felt like. Inside the shops, lazy ceiling fans turned in languid circles, doing little to push away the swelter. A woman at the bakery counter wiped her brow with a napkin. A teenage boy in jeans far too heavy for the weather leaned against a mailbox, scrolling on his phone. Elliot caught glimpses of them all without turning his head, cataloging the familiar and the strange. Habit, not paranoia. After 70 years, old instincts didn't vanish. They simmered beneath the surface, steady and patient. He was 2 storefronts past McAllister's when a sharp, commanding voice broke the thick air. "Hey, you there!" Elliot slowed, but did not stop immediately. His hand tightened imperceptibly on the curve of his cane as he turned his head toward the voice. A young officer, uniform crisp and eyes hidden behind mirrored sunglasses, strode toward him. Officer Dean Travers radiated a kind of brittle energy, the kind that needed only the faintest spark to ignite. "Mind telling me what you're doing around here, old man?" Travers asked, voice edged with suspicion. Elliot regarded him calmly. "Walking home?" he said, tone even but clipped by the heat. "From breakfast." Travers stepped closer, his boots thudding heavily against the sidewalk. "Yeah? Funny. You don't look like you belong around here." The words hit with more weight than they should have, soaked in something sour, something rotten. Elliot adjusted the brim of his hat and lifted his chin slightly, not in challenge, but in remembrance, the simple act of dignity he refused to surrender. "I was born 10 blocks from here," Elliot replied, voice soft but firm. Travers smirked, the kind of smile that wasn't meant to be friendly. A slight tremor flickered along his left hand as he placed it on his belt, a movement Elliot caught instantly. Nervousness masquerading as bravado. "Yeah, sure," Travers sneered. "Got a lot of types coming through lately, some thinking they can just walk wherever they want." A few people slowed on the sidewalk across the street. The heavy, oppressive air seemed to grow thicker with each breath. "Son," Elliot said, choosing his words carefully, "you're out of line." Something in Travers' jaw twitched. He stepped directly into Elliot's personal space, chest puffed slightly, daring a reaction. Elliot, seasoned by years of standing unflinching before men who thought themselves powerful, simply met the younger man's gaze without flinching. "Don't get mouthy with me," Travers said, voice rising. "Maybe you'd like a ride downtown to explain yourself." The threat hung there, cheap and thin. Elliot shifted his weight slightly on the cane, but made no other move. His stillness seemed to enrage Travers more than any outburst could have. Without warning, Travers shoved him. The impact was sudden, jarring. Elliot stumbled backward, the cane skittering out from under him with a hollow clatter as it struck the sidewalk. His shoulder hit the storefront window with a dull thud, jarring loose a wire basket stacked with miniature American flags. They fluttered to the ground around him like fallen promises. For a brief moment, the world tilted. The heat, the glaring sun, the stunned gasps of a few bystanders too unsure to intervene. Elliot righted himself slowly, knees aching, hand gripping the cool brick for balance. His heart hammered once, twice, then settled into a hard, steady thud. He turned to face Travers again. No rage distorted his features. No trembling shout tore from his throat. Instead, Elliot simply looked at the young officer. And what looked back was not fear, not submission, but a chilling, dignified silence that cut deeper than any words. Across the street, Miss Baxter lowers her sunglasses and lifts her phone, quietly pressing record. Inside the Carter home, the only sound was the slow, stubborn whir of a ceiling fan battling the heavy air. The blades turned in lazy defiance, barely shifting the humidity that clung to the worn furniture and faded curtains. Afternoon light spilled through the windows, fractured into dull shards by the old screen door, casting faint patterns over the floorboards. On a nearby shelf, metals once polished to mirror brightness now dulled under the weight of years and disappointment. Elliot Carter sat in his worn leather chair, his cane resting against the arm, the brass tip scuffed from its sudden betrayal that morning. He absently traced the grooves on the chair's armrest, deep furrows left by countless hours of silent battles fought within these walls. His body ached in familiar places, but it was the quiet erosion of dignity that gnawed more insistently. A car door slammed outside, heavy, hurried footsteps crunched over the gravel walkway, and moments later, the screen door creaked open without a knock. Marcus Carter entered, the air around him crackling with a restless energy that seemed to clash violently with the heavy stillness of the house. "Granddad?" Marcus's voice cut through the humidity. He took 2 steps into the room before his face contorted into a grimace at the sight of Elliot's bruised cheek, and the slow, deliberate way he shifted his weight. "What the hell happened?" he demanded, voice tight with suppressed fury. Elliot lifted his gaze slowly, offering no easy answers. Instead, he let the silence weigh between them, hoping, futilely, that it might cool the fire already kindling behind his grandson's eyes. Marcus's hands balled into fists at his sides. His sneakers squeaked against the floor as he shifted from foot to foot, unable to stand still. His gaze darted around the room, from the medals to the photographs on the wall, from the neatly folded flag inside its dusty glass case to the bandage peeking from under Elliot's rolled sleeve. "You have to report this," Marcus said, voice low but shaking. "You have to." Elliot exhaled, a slow, deliberate breath. "Patience, Marcus," he said, each word carefully measured. "Sometimes storms rage harder when you stand too quick against them." "Storms rage harder when no one stands at all," Marcus shot back, pacing a restless line across the room. His sneakers tapped rapid beats against the floor, a sharp contrast to Elliot's unyielding stillness. From the corner, the screen door rattled again. Ms. Lorraine Baxter stepped in. Sunglasses perched atop her graying hair, her face pinched with concern. She held her phone out wordlessly, thumb hovering above the screen. "I caught it," she said simply. Marcus lunged forward, snatching the phone with a muttered thanks. He tapped the screen. A shaky video filled the small frame. Officer Travers, looming, shoving Elliot back, the miniature flag scattering like fallen soldiers around him. The impact thudded hollowly through the speakers, followed by a stunned gasp from unseen bystanders. Elliot watched the footage impassively, but inside, something shifted, a small, grinding movement like tectonic plates beneath the surface. He saw himself, not as he felt, but as the world had seen. A frail old man, pushed like debris against a storefront, dignity torn loose like a threadbare cloth. Marcus's face darkened as he watched, thumb pausing above the share button. "You don't have to do anything," Marcus said, voice softer now, almost pleading. "Just let me." Elliot leaned back, the chair groaning under the shift. His gaze drifted past Marcus, beyond the immediate heat of outrage, to the mantel where the folded flag rested, colors muted but unbroken. His own reflection wavered faintly in the glass, fractured by light and dust, but recognizable. Still standing. 1,000 instincts warred within him, the soldier's discipline, the citizen's pride, the elder's patience. But beneath them all, something older and simpler stirred, a refusal to allow the story of that morning to become just another quiet indignity, absorbed and forgotten. Marcus, still standing rigid in front of him, lifted the phone higher. His eyes burned, not just with anger, but with belief. "We don't just survive injustice, Granddad. We expose it." The room fell silent, but for the stubborn whir of the ceiling fan overhead. Elliot's gaze lingered a long moment on the flag, the medals, the ghost of battles fought and battles lost. Then, slowly, almost imperceptibly, he nodded once. Marcus didn't hesitate. He turned on his heel, fingers moving with decisive swipes. In moments, the video uploaded to a whistleblower news portal under an anonymous tag, "Dignity on Trial." The buzz started low, a murmur, a shared glance, a whispered, "Did you see it?" And then it roared. What began as a flicker in online corners surged into something louder, more combustible. In the cafes along Liberty Street, old men paused mid-chest move to lean toward small TV sets. At barbershops, customers lingered longer in chairs as grainy footage replayed beneath banners advertising beard oils. On college lawns, students tapped furiously at phones, thumbs trembling over hashtags as if striking keys in a declaration. The video, that 10-second flash of injustice, spread like dry leaves in wind. One version ended with Elliot steadying himself beside the fallen flags. Another froze on the look he gave Travers, unblinking, unbothered by rage, but steeped in something deeper, dignity or defiance. Or both. By Tuesday morning, the names had settled into headlines and hashtags. Hashtag respect is not optional. Hashtag stand with Elliot. And beneath them, an avalanche of opinions. One user posted, "This man served longer than that cop's been alive." Another replied, "Just follow police orders, this wouldn't happen." Even those who said little still shared it. A silent amplification. In the square near City Hall, the tension was no longer digital. It took form in poster boards and folded arms, in coolers of bottled water, and volunteers in neon vests handing out pamphlets. The peeling Harvest Festival flyers were now buried beneath signs that read, "Dignity is a right." Just past the fountain, a woman held up a cardboard sign, "I could be Elliot." Next to her, a teenager wore a shirt with Marcus's now viral quote, "We don't just survive injustice, we expose it." Elliot stood at the edge of the square. Not at a podium, not on a platform, just there, beside the statue of a forgotten Confederate general, one hand resting lightly on his cane. He wore his Sunday shirt, collar pressed, but slightly frayed. He hadn't come to speak, he had come to watch. "He's here," someone whispered, and like clockwork, phones rose like sunflowers following light. Elliot didn't flinch. He adjusted the brim of his hat and looked out at the crowd. Their eyes met his, some eager, some reverent, others simply curious. He gave a single nod. That was all. The applause that followed wasn't deafening. It was layered. Polite in some corners, fierce in others. Across the square, Marcus wove through the crowd, clipboard in hand, stopping to thank volunteers, hand out contact cards, and answer the same questions over and over. His energy was constant, a pulsing current in sneakers and sweat. Reporters were everywhere now, local affiliates with soft microphones and big eyes. National names with teams, angles, and carefully timed outrage. The ones who had once skipped Savannah now treated it like the nation's moral crossroad. And then Travers spoke. It was brief. A statement outside the precinct. Pressed shirt, unreadable face, no apology. "I acted according to my training," he said. "There was reasonable suspicion. This has been blown out of proportion." It didn't land. It deflated. Commentators seized it. Anchors furrowed brows. Comment sections exploded. On air, a veteran from Charleston choked up. "That man walked with medals on his chest and a cane in his hand. And you're telling me that's suspicious?" Travers' words made things worse, not only for him, but for those trying to downplay it. Within hours, someone unearthed his fraternity photos. Another posted body cam footage from a 2021 stop involving a Hispanic teen. But it was Marcus who saw the real turn. An email pinged while he stood beneath a food truck awning, wiping mustard off his shirt. The sender was anonymous. The subject line read, "Buried complaint. Travers. 2018. No greeting, just a PDF attachment. A copy of an internal memo. Citizen complaint, use of force, sealed without follow-up. Marcus's stomach turned. He looked up at the sea of signs and chants and murmurs and phones. And in the distance, just beyond the steps of City Hall, he caught a glimpse of two city officials, faces tight, whispering, one shaking his head. The Savannah Civil Liberties Union had already offered their support that morning, promising a full legal team. But now Marcus held something more, something heavier. He tapped the screen and reread the final line of the memo. Subject's prior conduct suggests pattern. Recommend supervisory review, never enacted. Marcus receives an anonymous tip. A past complaint about Travers buried years ago is about to surface. The marble courthouse loomed like an ancient fortress, a relic both of justice served and justice denied. Its columns rose in solemn defiance of the morning sun, casting long shadows that crawled over the courthouse steps and into the assembled crowd. Reporters jockeyed for camera angles. Microphones glittered like insects. Protesters held signs high as if to shield themselves from the weight of the building's history. Inside, the temperature was cooler, but the tension was not. Every footstep echoed against marble walls. The sound of polished shoes on stone, some fast, some hesitant, formed a strange kind of percussion. Elliot Carter's own steps were slow but even. The brass tip of his cane struck the floor with a rhythm that seemed to quiet the hallway as he passed. He wore the same pressed shirt from the rally, now beneath a dark jacket, one button fastened. A deep bruise still colored the edge of his cheekbone, but it had begun to fade. Not vanish, just shift hues like a battlefield after rain. Marcus walked beside him, expression taut with focus. His hands remained at his sides, though they twitched slightly, aching to adjust a tie he wasn't wearing. Behind them, two members of the Civil Liberties Union whispered to each other, nodding at Elliot, then at a folder clutched between them. Elliot paused at the courtroom door, inhaled once, then nodded to Marcus. No words, just a breath. Inside, the gallery was nearly full. Rows of folding chairs creaked as the crowd shifted to get a better look. Cameras were forbidden in the room, but notepads scratched, and smartphones buzzed silently in pockets. A mural above the judge's bench, once vibrant with color, had faded into a ghostly tableau, freedmen shaking hands with uniformed soldiers, a mural no one had thought to restore. At the defense table, Officer Dean Travers sat rigid, shoulders unnaturally square, his hands clasped too tightly in front of him. A faint sheen of sweat dotted his forehead, despite the courthouse's air conditioning. He leaned toward his attorney, lips barely moving, jaw flexing once, twice. Judge Meredith Sloan entered without ceremony. She was small, pale, and moved with a swiftness that suggested impatience for posturing. Her gavel tapped twice, sharp and echoing. "Let's proceed," she said. The courtroom settled. Travers' defense attorney opened the morning with a clipped voice and a rehearsed posture. He framed the incident as a misunderstanding. Claimed his client acted in accordance with departmental protocol. Cited stress, confusion, an ambiguous stance from Mr. Carter. It was a dance, one Elliot had seen before, dressed in legal language that hoped to bury accountability in clauses. But then came Ms. Baxter. She stood at the witness podium, posture straight, phone held in both hands like a sacred object. The video played again, this time without commentary, without a headline. Just 10 seconds of sound and motion. Travers shoving, Elliot falling, the flags scattering. Gasps escaped the gallery. Judge Sloan raised a hand and said nothing. The defense attorney cleared his throat and moved on. His next witness, a patrol supervisor, offered only lukewarm support. "Officer Travers has always been committed," he said, pausing just a second too long between words. Then came Elliot. He didn't ask for help to approach the stand. His steps were deliberate. The courtroom silenced again, the kind of silence that didn't press, but leaned in. Marcus sat straighter in the front row, lips tight. The prosecutor asked questions gently. Elliot answered with brevity. He described the morning, his walk home, the exchange, the shove. "And how did you feel in that moment, Mr. Carter?" Elliot's brow furrowed. He didn't blink. "Like history was trying to teach itself the same lesson all over again," he said. A few pens stopped moving. Then came the defense's cross. "Mr. Carter, you didn't identify yourself to Officer Travers, did you?" "No," Elliot replied. "You didn't announce that you were a veteran?" Or a retired instructor from the National Training Corps? No. The attorney paused, sensing opportunity. Would you say Officer Travers could reasonably have assumed you were just a civilian? I am a civilian, Elliot replied. But not an ordinary one, the lawyer pressed. You've trained law enforcement, you've shaped minds, you're respected. Don't you think that might have changed the outcome had you just said so? Elliot shifted slightly in his chair. His eyes found Marcus for a breath, then turned back to the lawyer. I didn't need to announce who I was. Respect shouldn't depend on credentials. The attorney opened his mouth, then closed it. The prosecutor leaned forward. Mr. Carter, for the record, can you state the capacity in which you worked with law enforcement? Elliot's answer came without flourish. I trained tactical restraint and de-escalation for over 2 decades. Many officers. Some of them now command precincts. Any names you recall? He nodded. Captain Shelby, Lieutenant Inez, and Chief Rhodes, if I'm not mistaken. Judge Sloan looked up. Chief Rhodes, she said quietly. Currently commanding the West District? Yes, ma'am. A long pause. Travers shifted in his seat, a twitch breaking across his jawline. The buzz in the room became audible again. Not loud, but layered. A scraping of doubt, a rearrangement of judgment. The camera pans to Travers, face slack, eyes wide, as murmurs ripple through the courtroom. The shield on Travers' badge glinted briefly under courtroom lights, a dying flash of a crumbling defense. He sat with his back rigid, hands folded too tightly in his lap, but the tension in his jaw betrayed the illusion of control. The badge above his heart, once a symbol of authority, now looked misplaced, like armor on the wrong side of a battle. The air in the courtroom had turned thick. Even the HVAC vents, tucked high near the corners, failed to stir the rising heat of close bodies, strained nerves, and the unrelenting buzz of interest. Every cough echoed. Every squeak of a chair sounded like dissent. The jury sat motionless, pens idle. They no longer needed to write. Elliot Carter sat at the plaintiff's table, hands clasped loosely in front of him, eyes fixed straight ahead. He hadn't spoken again that day. He didn't need to. The weight of the morning still lingered in the air like an aftershock. His presence now was not to argue, but to exist. Calm, steady, resolute. Marcus sat behind him, phone in hand, screen dark. He wasn't scrolling. He was watching, reading the room, calculating what came next. The prosecution rose with quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't need theatrics because it carries ammunition. He approached the judge and requested permission to admit new evidence. Previously sealed disciplinary record, he said, holding a thin folder. Recently verified. Judge Sloan took it without comment, adjusted her glasses, and skimmed the first page. Her eyes narrowed, but her tone remained flat. Proceed. The document was displayed on the overhead monitor, redacted but unmistakable, a 2018 citizen complaint. A young black veteran pulled from his car on suspicion of a stolen license plate. Later confirmed to be a system error. The officer involved? Dean Travers. The courtroom shifted, a ripple of movement that wasn't quite surprise, but confirmation. The prosecution highlighted 2 more reports. All sealed. All dismissed with minimal inquiry. All involving minority civilians. Travers' attorney objected, but it was half-hearted. Even he knew the tide had turned. When Travers took the stand again, the courtroom held its collective breath. His walk was slower, his mouth tighter. He gripped the wooden armrest of the witness box longer than necessary before sitting. The prosecutor's tone was even. Officer Travers, do you recall the 2018 incident involving a Mr. Leroy Banks? Travers didn't answer immediately. I recall the name, he muttered. Do you recall what your justification was for the stop? I don't remember every detail. You pulled a decorated veteran from his vehicle at gunpoint, in front of his grandchildren. That incident resulted in trauma counseling for the children, and a complaint filed with your department. Travers' shoulders tightened. I followed procedure. And yet that complaint was sealed within days. Do you deny that your superior at the time recommended a formal review that never happened? Travers' jaw moved as if he were chewing words he couldn't swallow. He shot a glance at his attorney, but no rescue came. The prosecutor leaned in. Is this also what you mean when you say you acted according to training with Mr. Carter? That did it. Travers slammed a hand against the edge of the box. You people always twist things. The room jolted. The judge raised a hand, but the prosecutor didn't flinch. You people, officer? Travers flushed. That's not what I meant. Then say what you meant. Travers's breath came faster. He looked around the courtroom, eyes darting like a cornered animal. Beads of sweat glistened on his brow. The silence around him was thick, heavier than accusation, sharper than shame. You think he's some kind of hero? Travers barked suddenly, jerking a thumb toward Elliot. He played the system, got everyone riled up with his old man act, and that damn cane like he's Moses or something. Murmurs rose from the gallery. The judge banged her gavel once, twice, then gave up as a wave of sound washed over the courtroom. Travers continued, voice rising, raw and uncontrolled. I've seen his kind, pretending they're better than the rest of us. He thinks he's untouchable. The prosecutor didn't speak. He didn't need to. Travers's voice cracked as he added, almost involuntarily, you give these damn people a camera, and suddenly they're saints. The air froze. No one moved. No one needed to. Judge Sloan stood. This hearing will recess for the day. The court will reconvene tomorrow morning at 9. Mr. Travers, you will remain until the marshal clears this floor. She didn't look at him as she spoke. Her eyes were fixed somewhere far off, at the mural behind the bench, or perhaps at the ghost of a gavel's promise. The judge adjourns proceedings, stone-faced, and hints strongly at a ruling to come. When justice finally came, it did not roar or crash. It unfolded, quiet and inexorable as the tide. Judge Sloan's voice carried no drama as she delivered the verdict. Her words, measured and deliberate, filled the courtroom with a calm finality. Dean Travers was found guilty of official misconduct, stripped of his badge, and ordered to issue a formal apology before being placed under indefinite suspension. She did not scold. She did not rise. She simply spoke, and it was enough. The courtroom held its breath as the gavel came down for the last time. No cheers erupted, no gasps, only a quiet ripple of understanding, as if everyone present knew that this kind of justice, the kind not built on spectacle but on truth, deserved stillness. Outside, the sun had begun its descent over Savannah. The warm light filtered through the trees, casting golden patches across the courthouse steps. The crowd had already gathered. Word had spread long before the ruling. People arrived not to protest, but to witness. Forsyth Park, a few blocks down, had transformed. What began as a simple gathering turned into a reflection of something deeper, a town confronting itself. Rows of folding chairs stretched under strings of light bulbs. Children chased each other barefoot along the grass. Banners bearing Elliot Carter's name fluttered alongside signs that read, "Dignity is a right, not a reward." Elliot moved slowly through the crowd, leaning gently on his cane, acknowledging nods and handshakes without a single word. People didn't ask him to speak. They made space. A mother placed her hand over her heart as he passed. A teenager silently offered him a bottle of water. An older man removed his cap. Near the small wooden stage, Marcus stood, sleeves rolled, clipboard tucked under one arm. His eyes scanned the crowd, alert and proud. When he took the mic, he didn't yell. He didn't grandstand. My grandfather taught me that silence can be louder than noise, he began. That restraint is a kind of strength, and that sometimes dignity is the sharpest blade in a broken system. He paused, letting the breeze carry the words. Then he smiled faintly. That's why I'm running for city council this fall. Not because I want to fight, but because I want to listen. And build. Like he did. Applause rose. Not explosive, but full-bodied. Elliot, seated just beneath the oaks, gave a single nod, his hands folded loosely in his lap. The breeze ruffled the collar of his shirt, carrying with it the faint scent of magnolia. When Elliot finally stood, he didn't approach the stage. He stepped into the open clearing, facing the crowd directly. His voice, when it came, needed no amplification. You cannot silence dignity, he said. You cannot arrest the truth. He looked over them, old and young, weary and hopeful, and then lowered his gaze, as if the words were meant for the roots beneath his feet, as much as the people before him. The crowd rose, Not with shouts, but with respectful, solemn applause. Rows of clapping hands. Nods, a woman wiping her cheek, a veteran tapping his chest twice. And then, through the parting of the crowd, a young man stepped forward. He couldn't have been more than 20, the academy badge on his collar crisp, uncreased. He stopped 2 paces from Elliot and stood at attention. No words, no gesture, save one. He raised his hand in a silent, heartfelt salute. The sun dipped low over Forsyth Park, casting long shadows behind Elliot Carter as he sat quietly among neighbors, strangers, and those forever changed by a single moment of restraint. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just watched, his hands folded over the cane that had once steadied more than his body. Justice, when it came, wasn't loud. It arrived through quiet defiance, unshaken dignity, and a lifetime that refused to bend under insult. Sometimes the most powerful stand is the one that doesn't rise to anger. And as the last light caught the glint of a young cadet's silent salute, Elliot knew this wasn't the end of a battle, just the passing of its torch. If this story stirred something in you, consider sharing it with someone who still believes in decency over noise and strength that doesn't need shouting.